Hey class, this is Dr. Lee Jones on the line with you. Our goal in this recording is to walk our way into chapter one, slowly at first, I think, and we'll have a discussion here about what is government, or we'll get to learn what is the definition of politics. Let's begin by looking at this poetic line written by Ellen Sturgis Hooper. She wrote, I slept and dreamed that life was beauty. Then I woke and found that life was duty. So here, I use this to say there are two states of existence, right? There is sleeping, where you are unaware of things, and then there is being awake, excuse me, where you are quite aware of the things that are happening around you. Let's use that to talk about why a class like the American government is important, right? You can be in a dream-like sleeping state where you're thinking that everything is beautiful the way the people interact with their government. However, when you wake up by getting your reading and doing some study and doing some detailed analysis about the relationship between the people and their government, perhaps when you wake up, you find that life does imply a certain amount of responsibility or a duty to you, right? Look at that line by Rousseau. Rousseau said, man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. What are you in chains? What are the nature of your chains? What do you do to break those chains? Do you stay in those chains like uh, the cave dwellers in Plato's allegory of the cave? Do you just stay there and learn how to interpret the images on the wall? Or do you, allow yourself to be brought out into the light of day? So that's one of the, let's say, it's one of the reasons why you take a class like this, to get to, come to a new understanding about the relationship between yourself and the government. Now, you take a class like this in the political science department. So this class is an exercise in political science. Let's define what we mean by science. There are two broad types of sciences, right? Overall, I'm generalizing a lot here, but there are the natural sciences and then there are the social sciences. The natural sciences deals with the so-called laws of the empirical world. They look to use their empirical observations to come up with relationships, and when those relationships are steady over the course of time, then those relationships take on a standardized statement, which is typically called a law, right? And so, biology, physics, chemistry, that's what we're talking about here, the natural sciences. Now, in terms of how we're doing it for political science, we are engaged in the social sciences, where the natural scientist is looking to understand the empirical world. The social scientist is also looking to use his empiricism and apply the scientific method to the relationships that are at work between human beings and groups, between human beings, groups, and the state, between human beings, groups, the state, and the corporation. The way that you observe empirical phenomena in these relationships leads you to come to certain things that may be reproducible, it may be falsifiable, but when things are repeated, then perhaps they take on the definition of a theory. And then once you have a theoretical statement on a thing, as we're going to do in this class, then we can get to understanding how things works. So examples of social sciences are things like, history, economics, sociology, psychology. But what we're doing is political science. So, as we just saw, the natural sciences and the social sciences, both of them use the scientific method. So let's define the phrase science then as the use of a method to answer questions, to test knowledge, to investigate the empirical world, or simply the use of a method to solve problems. Now that we have defined what the phrase science implies, now let's define what the word politics means. There's a few people that we could use to understand what politics is, but I prefer what Max Weber said, the German sociologist. I prefer what he said in 1918 in his essay called Politics as Vocation. Let's go into it right now. 1918, Max Weber issues this essay or this speech, Politics as Vocation, and look at some of the things he says. Number one, Weber says, like the political institutions historically preceding it, the state is a relation of men dominating men. Excuse me? It's a relationship of what? It's a relation of men dominating other men. I'm looking for the pointer. Men dominating men. Okay. A relation supported by means of legitimate, which is meaning considered to be legitimate violence. If the state is to exist, then the dominated must obey the authority claimed by the powers that be. According to Max Weber, then, states are relations of men engaged in dominating other men through the use of violence. Therefore, states use force. Force then does imply power, and politics then involves the state being engaged in the legitimate use of force. So politics is about power. Now we're inferring here, we can be even more blunt as we read Weber. Let's continue with Weber. Weber says, today, however, we have to say that a state is a human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. Legitimate use of physical force. Note that territory is one of the characteristics of the state. Specifically, at the present time, the right to use physical force is ascribed to other institutions or to individuals only to the extent to which the state permits it. The state is considered the sole source of the right to use violence. Hence, for us, politics means striving to share power. Striving to share power or striving to influence the distribution of power either among states or amongst groups within a state. According to Max Weber, we see it clearly and plain as day. What's that thing on your face that has two holes in it and often you use it to breathe? That is your nose. Well, just as plain as that nose is on your face, Weber here tells us that politics is about power. That if you're engaged in a political discussion, you are engaged in a discussion centering around the use, means, distribution of power. Now let's keep on going. Let me move these marks. Let's continue with Weber, right? What do we understand by politics? Hence, politics for us means striving to share power or striving to influence the distribution of power. When Weber goes here, right, he says when a question is said to be a political question, or when a cabinet minister is said to be a political official, or when a decision is said to be politically determined, what is always meant is that interest in the distribution, the maintenance, and the transfer. The transfer of what? The transfer of power. These are decisive for answering the questions and determining the official sphere of activity. He who is active in politics strives for power. Strives for power, right? Either as a means in serving other aims, ideal or egoistic, or as power for power's sake, that is, to enjoy the prestige feeling that power gives. So, let's just be clear. Using Max Weber as our guide in his 1918 essay, Politics as Vocation, we are now clear that politics is about power. Politics equals power. Politics is all about power. Now, what's power? Well, we can say that power is the ability to influence the choices that are made by others, but primarily, politics is all about power. Now, let's look at some other things. We also say that there's a politics of choice. When we talk about the politics of choice, we're talking about how we move from individual questions into societal issues and thus how they require a common policy. All right. So you look at an individual circumstance. Maybe you see somebody on the street homeless and you say, hey, why is that person homeless? And then you personalize it like, boy, that guy looks like he's in a bad spot. Maybe that might happen to me. What if one day I become homeless? And then you say, that's a problem. It's a problem for that guy to be homeless. It would be a problem for me to be homeless. So then what can we do to attack homelessness in our society? And if homelessness is something that is spread to many people around, in the society, then you need a policy to guide that type of activity. And then what instrument, what group of people is there to create policy that then is the purpose of government? So politics of choice then means that you're going to move from the individual question to the societal issue. And then, if that societal issue is large enough, it's going to require a common policy to be developed by the government. Next, let's think about the politics of change. When we say the politics of change, we are acknowledging that the political world is always moving, especially in a democracy. You're always having people moving in and out of positions, especially when you think of the intransigence of the Trump administration officials. Lots of movement in the upper echelons of the Trump administration. So the politics of change then, because it involves flux and transition, tension and conflict, we are talking about elections. Therefore, the politics of change primarily is all about elections, and elections involve official institutions intersecting with citizens and voters to change who is in charge of the various policies that are developed in the society. Last point here, let's talk about the politics of space. When we mention the politics of space, we want to say that your space is the area within which your politics occurs. And inside that area, what you are looking to do is you are looking to maximize your political voice, which means you're going to tell the government, hey, do this for me or stop doing this to me. And then you want to use political agency, means that you're not only going to be able to tell the government what you want it to do, you're going to have to go and find a way to make the government do what you want it to do. So when we say the politics of space, we are talking about the dual characteristics of voice and agency. So that's about it for this recording. That's all I wanted to achieve here. We're saying that there is a politics of choice, there is a politics of change, there is a politics of space, and when you add them all up together, we are saying, and this is a mantra, that if we were doing this class in person, I would absolutely be drilling this into your head. Politics is about power. Politics is about power. Politics is about power. And power is the ability to manipulate choice. I'll see you on the next recording. Thank you.